All right. So you've refreshed your recollection or looked for the first time at the press release. And let's start our discussion at this part of the press release where it breaks down the revenues for, the very first financial information talks about media as one big category of revenue. This is a breakdown of what they mean by media, okay? So we're just going to go down the list and talk about whether the category is licensing revenue or not licensing revenue. So the network. First of all, what is it? What does network mean? What is this thing that they're doing? How do they generate money from network?
TVs, websites,
internet.
This category, network, is just TV. So it used to be the case. It used to be the case that WWE had no outlet of its own for its content. And they have probably, when I worked there 8, 9 years ago, they had basically 3 television shows a week. A 2-hour show, a 1-hour show, and another 1-hour show. Or 3, 2, 1, something like that. 7 hours of new programming a week. Now, WWE has, I don't even know how many hours of new programming a week, because they have those 3 main shows still. One's called Raw, one is called SmackDown. Now they have a show just about the divas, which are the female wrestlers. They have a show about one of the wrestlers and his girlfriend. It's like a reality show. The camera's following them around the house, whatever. They have so much content that they decided, let's have our own network. So CNN is a network, right? And Oprah Winfrey has her network. It's basically just one channel, but it's a curated channel by that one network. Like any television network has basically historically been just one channel. So WWE now has a network through which it pumps all of this content that it can. It's what it used to do by pay-per-view, what it used to do on Monday nights broadcast television is now through the network. So are network revenues licensing revenues or not? Are they licensing intellectual property to generate that money or not? Yes. Why is that? Because they don't have the technology infrastructure, right? The satellites in the air to either beam it to your home or the wires on the ground to get it there through plain old terrestrial transmission, right? They don't have that. So in order to deliver the content to the consumer, they have to license that content to someone who has all that technology that can get it to you. So that's licensing revenue. In the third quarter of 2018, $49.5 million. Okay, content rights. I'll just tell you what this is rather than make you guess. So this is the historical TV business. Remember I said before they had the network, they had to license their shows to other networks. Well, there's still some of that in existence because not every the WWE network isn't everywhere. For example, it's probably not in Athens. On your cable system in Athens or wherever you live, there's probably not a channel that's like the WWE network. So if you want to watch some WWE programming, you have to go to some other channel that's gotten it from WWE. So this is actually still the majority of their media business. If you look at the dollar figure, $65.9 million as opposed to $49.5 through the network. So that's basically television revenue. Is that licensing or not? Yes, it is. Yeah. They license the content to somebody else who broadcasts it or transmits it through cable. So far, 100% licensing revenue. Advertising and sponsorship. This is basically if you want to have your product in the ring during a match. Product placement. You'll pay WWE to do that. If you want to sponsor an event, WWE is going to be at the arena and it's going to be the Nokia Royal Rumble sponsorship. That's how they generate this $15 million. So is that licensing revenue or not? Are they licensing out IP to generate that revenue?
No, this is not.
Right, no, it's not. It's actually licensing in. It's licensing in.
Yeah.
For the most part.
License
So there are probably license agreements involved in this because WWE is, while their primary motivation is to get the money, in order to generate the money, they have to have a license that governs their use of that trademark. So it's licensing, but it's not licensing revenue because actually the money is paid not to access WWE's intellectual property, it's to place intellectual property associated with WWE. So 15 million so far, not licensing. And then other, I forget, oh, I know what the other is. It's other television shows, right? So there's like, they give this example, a television show called Ms. and Mrs. That's the reality show about the one wrestler named Miz and his wife, Ms. and Mrs. It's a television show. For some reason, they're not showing it as network or core content, they show it as other, but it's $11.7 million. Is that licensing revenue?
It's a television show, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so of the 142 million, so far, only 15 million is not licensing. Let's go on to the next category.
I have
Okay.
a question.
Yeah.
If another show invites one of the wrestlers like John Cena as a guest to talk, is he going to take the money or the company?
Well, it's interesting because WWE's model, it's a brilliant model. WWE's model is they own everything. They own not only the WWE brand, but for the most part, they own the wrestlers' names and personas, right? So WWE is the one entitled to that money. The interesting thing is that WWE is kind of like, for those of you who don't know, professional wrestling got its start in the world as like a traveling show, right? The wagon would come to your town and they would stage this wrestling match, like a circus, but historically, even though the outcomes were predetermined, people didn't know that and they would gamble on it, right? So it was kind of it was illegal. It was a fixed sporting event. But anyway, because of that, it's a very, even though it's a New York Stock Exchange company, it's still a family-owned company by the McMahons who own it, and they're still very much like carnival people. So WWE is entitled to the money, but if they like John Cena that day, he's going to get most of the money.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that, you know, kind of here.
It is mostly the issue between the competitors and the organization.
Between they don't really have any competitors.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was the issue in UFC before Conor McGregor. When Conor McGregor came, they made another rules, so they give much more money to the.
More money to the talent. Sure, yeah, well that's why WWE can own everything because they don't really have competition. If you want to be a professional wrestler, which is distinguished from mixed martial arts, if you want to be a professional wrestler, you really don't have any other place to do it if you want to make a living at it.
Yeah.
So they take all the rights and they're like, oh, we'll pay you a salary. Don't get me wrong, a guy like John Cena, he's probably making, I don't know, $5-7 million a year. But there's 50 or 60 wrestlers on the roster and some of them make $23,000 a year, which, I mean, by some, you know, some economic system standards, not bad. But in the U.S., you can make more than $23,000 a year working at Starbucks. Okay, so this is the next category. This is the breakdown of what's listed above under the large category of live events. So, North American ticket sales and international ticket sales. Is that money generated from licensing or not? Basically $25 million. No, it's not licensing. They're selling tickets. They're putting on a live show and they're selling tickets. The interesting thing is, so they make $25 million selling tickets every year or every calendar quarter out of $100 million a year, out of $1 billion a year in revenue. So the live event, which is what most of us would think of when we think of WWE, is really only 10% of their revenue. And interestingly, they generate $25 million in revenue from that, but it probably costs them $35 million in revenue to put those shows on. So the wrestling thing is a money-losing proposition unless you do it to leverage all the intellectual property licensing. So 25 million, again, not in the licensing category. And here's more advertising and sponsorship, $500,000, and another category of other, 1.6 million. It's so little money we don't even need to worry about it. I think there's one more category. Consumer products. So here's the breakdown of consumer products into 3 categories. Consumer product licensing. This is what we already talked about. The dog beds, the t-shirts, the action figures. They earn $8.5 million per calendar quarter, roughly $35 million a year selling junk. Okay? Is that licensing revenue or not? Yeah, because they don't have factories that make dog beds, right? They have to license that out. Somebody else manufactures it and sells it to the public. So another $8.5 million a quarter licensing. E-commerce, that is the WWE shop. So if you want to buy a dog bed and you don't know where to go, you can go to WWE.com, click on shop, and buy it directly from WWE's e-commerce capability. Is that licensing revenue? It is, because even though you get it from WWE, again, they don't have the factory that manufactures dog beds. They're just the conduit, right? It's our IP, and if you want to click here on our website to get it, great. But they don't have a factory or a warehouse or anything. Licensing revenue. Venue merchandise. You go to the venue, you want to buy an Undertaker shirt, you can go to the merch stand, get an Undertaker shirt. Licensing or not? Yes, again, because they don't have t-shirt factories or anything else. So another $20 million out of the hole is licensing revenue. I've been following WWE for quite some time. Obviously, I've worked there for 5 years, but also because of the class, I follow it. And I've been following it since 2011 in this way. And here's the totals. On this spreadsheet that's up here, the yellow is licensing revenue. And the white is not licensing revenue. And if you look at the bottom, it's in red. I got to change the color on that, but total licensing revenue, basically $147 million out of 190. It's 78% of the revenue is from licensing, which is actually down. If you can see the bottom of this, licensing was going up from 2011 through 2017. All the way to 83%, and then in the last year, it dropped down to 78%. But still, a significant portion of the revenue based on IP licensing. And most of it, well, no, it's copyrights and trademarks. No patents, obviously. All right. So that's WWE and an illustration in how $1 billion a year is generated through IP licensing. Before we talk about these folks, who are these folks? Well, let's leave them up. I bring the Flintstones up because, remember the marketing, the 3 motivations to license. Marketing motivation, which is like the BMW credit card. The financial motivation, I just want to generate money, that's WWE. Strategic marketing, or strategic reason for licensing your IP. Why do you think I call up the Flintstones when I talk about strategic marketing, or strategic reason for licensing your IP? How do you know the Flintstones? You watch it when you were a kid? Do you watch it still?
Sometimes.
Yes,
I must.
still.
I do like that.
If I'm drunk enough. Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun show, right?
Mickey Mouse, I still
Better than
watch
Simpsons,
them.
but not enough.
Yeah. Why do you think I talk about them in an IP context at all? Let alone for a strategic reason.
They went from cartoons to films to...
All right, so you're talking about the history of the Flintstones. Let's watch a clip about my friends Fred and Barney.
They're your modern Stone Age family. Welcome to Watch. During its 6-season run, the show proved that an animated series could conquer primetime. The show was originally titled The Flagstones. However, a copyright claim from an existing strip caused the creators to change its name to the iconic title we know today. The Flintstones became the first animated program to include one self-contained story during the half-hour runtime. Up to that point, animated shows were made of multiple segments. With this revolutionary focus and the intensive release schedule, the studio was forced to develop an assembly line form of production based on simplified drawings and reduced body movements. This helped form the show's distinct style. The Flintstones took place in the city of Bedrock and was centered on modern prehistoric working-class life. Fred and Barney were often seen at the bowling alley, held memberships at the Water Buffalo Lodge, and were usually participating in outrageous schemes that always resulted in trouble from their wives.
Of all the dumb tricks you've ever pulled, Fred, that trampoline business takes the cake.
The town of Bedrock itself was a stylish and fantasy-based interpretation of the past. It merged long-extinct animals with cavemen, and even contained prehistoric versions of modern appliances and vehicles powered by animals and physical strength. Even their version of a newspaper caused laughs. It was a stone tablet and was usually thrown at Fred's head by the paperboy. Keeping with the prehistoric theme, everything was made of stone, wood, and animal skins.
Wonder if it's genuine alligator.
Oh, really? And what do I look like, a giraffe?
Even better, all the names were wordplay on different rocks and minerals. The Flintstones was originally intended as a program for the entire family. However, its ads were deemed not appropriate for children. For example, its end-of-show bumper promoted the series' primary sponsor, Winston Cigarettes. When the show was refocused more towards children, these were pulled, and the show was rebroadcast by NBC in 1967. But what really made the show so adored were its memorable characters. These included its star Fred Flintstone, who was a loudmouth quarry worker in a leopard skin tunic.
Hi, Candy. I'm too busy figuring what this is gonna cost me.
Like the rest of the cast, he was inspired by the popular 1950s sitcom The Honeymooners, and took his cues from the show's star, Jackie Gleason. Like Gleason, Fred was short-tempered, grouchy, loud, and prone to get-rich-quick schemes, but somehow he still remained soft-hearted and lovable.
Is that you, Fred? Make yourself comfortable, dear.
Fred was joined by his lovely and level-headed wife, Wilma, and his loyal friends, Barney and Betty Rubble.
What sort of commotion, Fred? You being robbed or something?
The extended cast included the Flintstones' pet dinosaur Dino, Fred's boss Mr. Slate, Wilma's mother, and an alien called the Great Gazoo. Several years into the show's run, each of the main families was given a child, Pebbles Flintstone and Bam Bam Rubble.
Oh, isn't that cute?
Since its debut, the Flintstones launched a multi-million-dollar merchandising machine with hundreds of toys and products released each year, including cereal endorsements and children's vitamins. There were also several specials and animated feature films, as well as 2 live-action Hollywood flicks. In 2011, Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane began the dubious task of producing a modern remake of the iconic series for a new generation to discover. The Flintstones was the perfect mix of satire and slapstick. It continues to entertain a wide audience in syndication several decades after the world first heard Fred's iconic catchphrase.
Alright, so it's a fun cartoon, right? Most of us know it. I mean, I watched it when I was a kid. I still watch it occasionally when I can. Same with some of you. But it was only on television in that art form for 6 years. 50 years ago. 66, 76, 86, 96, 06, 16, 53 years ago. It ended. And yet we still know it, and it still has all of those products, right? In fact, this is the reason why most people in America would know them. These are the most popular Flintstones branded products, the vitamins and the cereals.
Yeah.
Who else knows another Flintstones product? Anybody? What?
The band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, have made one of their songs with Yabba Dabba Doo.
Oh, really?
Give it away, give it away, give it away now.
Yeah.
They made it Yabba Dabba, Yabba Dabba, Yabba Doo now.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I never... Did they say that that was their inspiration?
I don't know, but I've listened to that song.
Yeah, okay,
And,
okay.
I found it on YouTube.
Fair enough, fair enough.
I've seen the best.
Pez dispenser.
Yeah, with it's candy. It's
So again, like, you know, many of us wouldn't think of how much money that WWE generates. Many of us wouldn't think how much money Flintstones generate from this television show that was on for 6 years and ended 53 years ago. Does anybody have an idea, first of all, how many billions of dollars of children's vitamins are sold in the United States alone every year? Then we'll talk about what share of that market is Flintstones. How many billions a year in children's vitamins are sold in the United States? $23 billion in vitamins every year, children's vitamins. Do you use children's vitamins?
Yeah.
Okay.
But not face.
We never had them when I was a kid.
I'm still a child.
We didn't use vitamins when I was a kid, but a lot of people use vitamins for their children, and in the United States alone, they sell $23 billion worth of vitamins. What percentage of that do you think is Flintstones vitamins?
2%.
Try 52%.
Okay.
52%
That's good. Okay.
of 23 billion. So 12.5 billion or 11.5 billion dollars a year generated from Flintstones vitamins alone. And of course, Hanna-Barbera doesn't get all of that money, but even if they get 10%, right? That's still $110 million a year for doing something back in 1966, right?
Do you know who makes the vitamins?
I don't, but it's some company we never heard of.
Yeah, that's why.
Because this is a strategic motivation to license, right? Hanna-Barbera says, well, we have this valuable intellectual property. It's for kids. We could do it with vitamins, but we're not a vitamin company. We don't want to have vitamin factories and get FDA approval. And let's just license the brand and let the good people at Merck or wherever do it. Cereal. So, how much cereal do you think is sold in the United States a year? If vitamins are 23 billion, how much cereal?
50. 65.
It's actually less, and I'll tell you why, because vitamins are more expensive than cereal. They probably sell more boxes of cereal, but a box of cereal is like $2, and a thing of vitamins is like $15. So, $10 billion a year worth of cereal is sold in the United States. And remember I told you how long that aisle is? So there's a lot of competition in that space. Of the 10 billion, 15% of it, though, is still Flintstones. So that's still $150 million a year, right? So a tremendous success story where IP licensing is concerned, and also a good example of a strategic motivation to license. All right, so we've got two things left to do today before we take a break. First thing is, pretty quick discussion on, we talked about why a licensor would grant a license, right? To avoid the cost of making the baseball gloves or to not have to go through FDA approval itself. Why would a licensee take a license? If you've got a vitamin company, why would you license this brand instead of making Joe's brand vitamins? There's a lot of reasons. What's Huh? It's cheaper than what? Than developing your own brand. That's right. If I want to develop my own brand, I have to put a cartoon on the air for 5 years and then wait 60 years for it to be this valuable. Or I can license your brand and I'm selling vitamins tomorrow, right? Why else? It's cheaper than developing my own brand. Why else?
You don't need to market.
You don't need to market.
Yeah.
They probably do still market.
Marketing.
They probably do still market, but it gives you a huge head start, right? I've got a known brand, and it's a trusted brand. Parents love Flintstones, right?
Children.
I mean, do you really think there's any difference between Flintstones children's vitamins and some other children's vitamins? Darth Vader children's vitamins? No, it's the same stuff. It's like we talked before about the painkillers, the real, the brand name and the generic one. But you got the trusted brand. You have immediate ability to sell a lot of product. It's also faster to market, right? Especially now, let's move away from trademarks for a minute and talk about, say, for example, licensing a patent. I can either develop my own technology or I can license yours. But if I license yours, I'm selling stuff tomorrow, right? And I think the final reason that a licensee would take a license is sometimes they don't have a choice, particularly, again, away from trademarks, but sometimes, particularly with patents, you create an invention and you don't even realize it's infringing on someone else's patent, right? And it's like getting your hand caught in the cookie jar. Oh, I'm already taking the cookies. If I don't want to stop eating cookies, I have to get a license. So sometimes a licensee takes a license because they don't have any choice. If they don't take the license, they're going to get sued for infringement.
They're making an agreement.
Yeah, then they'll get an agreement.
They're sharing technology so they can do it.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, if I have patents...
That's why they're protecting themselves to all the time.
Right, so if I have patents and I get with my hand caught in your cookie jar and you come chasing me, maybe I can also chase you. So we cross-license our technology. Correct. All right, so those are the motivations to license. Now, one last thing I want to do today is talk about, oh, where is it? It's not in here. One other thing I want to bring up. All right, so this is interesting. That's a trademark issue there. This is a company called Logo Tournament, okay? And we're going to use this company to give us our first experience with looking at an IP conveyance agreement. And we don't yet know whether it's a license or a transfer of the IP. So what Logo Tournament does is I have a business and I need a logo for it. And I don't want to hire a graphic designer to create a logo because it's expensive, and what if I make a mistake and hire the wrong designer? I'm going to get something I don't like. So I can go to Logo Tournament and I can create a contest for designers across the world to compete for a prize that I put up as the contest, as the one who starts the contest. They have 3 levels of prizes. Let me see. I would have to look for a while to find it, but basically there are 3 levels of prizes. I think it's like $200, $400, or $600. If I need a logo, I put up that amount of money, and they run a contest for designers to compete to win it. And I'm with a firm now, but before my firm I had my own practice. And for my own practice, I needed the logo for the website. So I ran and plus I was curious about this, so I ran a contest. And I think I chose the middle prize level, so like $400. And the way it works is you tell them what your business is, what the name is, the word mark. You need a logo to go with the word. And anything else you think will help the designer to create something you like. Like, oh, well, I like the Motorola logo. So something kind of sort of like that. You give them these parameters. And when I did that for a mere, $300 or $400, I had probably 60 designers competing. And each one did probably 10 or 20 different designs. So I had 1,000 designs to choose from, and they were all competing for that same few $100s in money. And ultimately, there was a lot of garbage, but there was some good stuff. So now, from an IP perspective, what we're going to do is, and I think since we're already past 4:30, tomorrow when we come back, we're going to talk about whether you as a lawyer would be comfortable advising your client to get a logo through Logo Tournament. So the assignment, sometime we could do it in the next 20 minutes while we're here, or we could take it with us as homework before we go get drunk tonight.
Let's do it here.
Let's do it here.
It's fine.
She gets drunk.
We're just going to sit here together and read it, which is fine. But the task is, we're not going to talk about it until tomorrow. So the task is, find the contract on logo tournament that anybody who wants to get a logo through them agrees to, and that the designers all agree to. And then tomorrow and look at it and devise your advice for the client. Should you get this logo? Shouldn't you get this logo? Do you get the rights or don't you get the rights? What are the benefits? What are the detriments? Okay? The one thing I'll tell you, having gone through this exercise myself, is the contract is not in one place on this website. You have to click around, and I'll show you an example. So, if you click on contests, anywhere at the bottom of the site, you'll see terms of service, right? You'll also see, if you click, so that's probably part of the contract, right? The terms of service. Click on designers. Oh gosh, they recently redesigned this website, but on here somewhere, there is something called the Designer Code of Conduct. There's also something called, that's an FAQ, which looks and smells a lot like a contract. So one of the tricks in doing this assignment is finding the whole thing and then deciding whether you'd be comfortable advising your client. Yes, I think you can get your IP from this place, or no, I don't think you should. Okay? And if you want to sit here and do it together, we can. I'll be here until the last person leaves. But otherwise, let's just take that as homework, and when we come back, that'll be the first thing we do tomorrow. We'll start discussing that, with our lawyer hats on, as though we're giving advice to the client. Cool? Cool. All right, thanks, guys. That's it. Done.
Thank you.